8. Foo Fighters. If you ask anyone nowadays what the Foo Fighters are, they'd likely tell you about the rock band fronted by Dave Grohl. However, if you asked a World War II pilot or an avid military historian, they'd have a very different answer for you. Foo Fighters was the name given to the unidentified objects that many pilots came across during the Second World War. We first heard these strange occurrences being called Foo Fighters in 1944. That was when a radar operator named Donald J. Myers in the 415th Night Fighter Squadron decided to name them after a catchphrase in his favorite comic, Smokey Stover. The nickname caught on with other soldiers, and soon it became the universal term for mysterious and weird flying objects. There were multiple sightings of Foo Fighters throughout World War II. One of the first sightings came when a Polish merchant ship, the SS Pulowski, was transporting Allied troops in 1941. As they passed through the Indian Ocean, two of the crew members reported seeing a green orb in the sky, which they equated to be about half the size of the full moon. In November 1944, strange yellow, white, and red lights dogged Allied pilots in the skies over Europe. They moved quickly, following the planes around, and even outmatched them in terms of agility and speed. The US Air Force's Charles R. Bastienne spotted them above the skies of Belgium and the Netherlands during the closing months of the war, describing them as two fog lights flying at high rates of speed that could change direction rapidly. It's not just during World War II that Foo Fighters have been spotted though. In fact, they've been spotted even as recently as 2021, when Pakistani pilots reported seeing a large round ball with a metal ring around it flying through the air. 7. Northern Lights. There's a strange thing in the sky that has captivated people around the globe for thousands of years. We have cave paintings in France depicting it from 30,000 years ago. It was also mentioned by astronomers such as Galileo, who gave us its name. It still holds our imagination today, as many people make it a lifetime goal in order to see it. What we're talking about are the Northern Lights, otherwise known as the Aurora Borealis. This natural phenomenon consists of dancing waves of light that pass across the night sky at the top of the northern hemisphere, close to the North Pole. Many colors such as greens, pinks, blues, and yellows all merge together and swirl across the darkness. According to the Tromsø Geophysical Observatory, the ideal spot to observe the Northern Lights is within a 1,550-mile radius of the North Pole. This particular region is even nicknamed the auroral zone for how frequently it occurs. That doesn't mean you can't see it further south though, you just have to plan better to catch it at just the right moment. However, this spectacular natural phenomenon has a dark side. The reason that Aurora Borealis is caused comes down to a side effect of one of the Earth's defense systems. The Earth's magnetic field runs from pole to pole and is stronger at either end. When the Northern Lights flare up, this is the field at work protecting us from solar flares and particles from the sun, which fire at the planet at speeds of over 45 million miles per hour. This event is called solar wind. The energy that the magnetic field catches is drawn to the poles in the very north and south. These southern lights are called the Aurora Australis, leading to this majestic light display. If the solar flares were strong enough, they would cause devastating damage to modern-day living. For example, when a particularly strong burst hit the Earth in March 1989, leading to the aurora being seen as far south as Honduras, the geomagnetic power led to the entire power grid in the Canadian province of Quebec being completely wiped out. 6. The Chilean UFO. In 2014, Chilean Navy pilots in a Eurocopter AS-532 Cougar spotted something strange in the sky while on a training mission. They could only see it through infrared lenses, and it appeared to look like two blobs joined together. As the object moved through the sky, it emitted curious black trails of some sort of substance. At first, not believing their eyes, they radioed local airports and airfields to see whether they had picked up the object on their radars. They hadn't seen it on their systems at all. The pilot of the helicopter tried to message it through their radios, but there was no response from the UFO. Concerned by the footage, the military chose to classify the video until they were able to truly figure out what exactly was going on. Had they really managed to capture alien life above the skies of their country? 3 years later, on January 5, 2017, it seemed like they were no closer to getting answers. The only thing that the Chilean government could agree on was to classify it as a UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon. Eventually, the video was posted on the internet by a known UFO enthusiast, Leslie Keane, to see whether anyone around the world could crack the case. However, after just 5 days, internet sleuths working together managed to figure out a possible explanation. Using flight data, they were able to work out that there was a passenger plane, an Airbus A340, that would have been in the exact position of the strange object that the Eurocopter picked up. As the Airbus was going faster than the helicopter and heading north, and in its takeoff ascent from where the pilot was, it would have made the Airbus look like it was moving super slow. But how do you explain the strange shape? The Airbus A340 has 2 pairs of jet engines on either side of its wings, which to a poorer quality camera like the one on the Eurocopter had for infrared would have merged together to create 2 connected blobs. As for the strange black trails of substance, it turns out that this is exactly what contrails look like in infrared vision. Would you have been able to work out what this strange object was? Let us know in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. 5. Sundogs. Sundogs aren't actually canine companions in the clouds, but they are certainly one of the most fascinating phenomena to happen in our sky. If you've ever looked up into the sky and thought that it looked like there were multiple but less bright suns, what you probably spotted were sundogs. Their scientific name is parhelia, and they're usually found 22 degrees to the left or right of the sun when they occur. You'll usually see them in winter or when temperatures drop, as they're formed by the sun refracting through ice crystals stored in the clouds. Visible when the sun is near the horizon, you might need to wake up early to see one. Typically, sundogs are white, much like mock suns. However, there have been other colors reported as well, often a rainbow gradient with red in the center. Sometimes, sundogs are accompanied by another marvel of light, a sun halo. This looks like a giant ring of light around the sun and is caused in the same way as sundogs. Ice crystals with hexagonal shapes in clouds reflect the sunlight to create this ethereal effect. Sun halos also have other names, so you might have heard of an ice bow, nimbus, or gloriole. They're all the same thing. Although we aren't sure for certain how sundogs got their nickname, one of the explanations is pretty cute. It's said that they're called sundogs because the Greek god Zeus was walking his dogs across the sky. The sun is Zeus, and the 2 smaller lights following him faithfully around the skies are his pooches. 4. Volcanic lightning. Lightning can be quite dramatic. But when you see a swirling column of it wrapped around the red-hot plume of an erupting volcano, it's enough to take your breath away and have you running for cover too. Volcanic lightning only occurs when a volcano erupts. Like most other forms of lightning, it happens when static electricity concentrates in the atmosphere before becoming thunderbolts. However, volcanic lightning only occurs in the plume of a volcano, and scientists are starting to unravel its secrets as to how exactly it occurs. One of the ways in which it happens is very similar to a traditional thunderstorm. The warm air from the volcano rises until it reaches the colder temperatures of the sky. They continue to rise into the atmosphere, getting colder and colder, before turning into ice particles bouncing and bumping into each other to create an electrical charge. The same principle is true when it comes to fracto emission, a phenomenon that's unique to volcanic eruptions. However, instead of ice particles, in this case it's small bits of rock and ash from the eruption that collide together to create the lightning's power. Some of the rocks can also have radioactive qualities, which can also help to contribute to these storms. It's also a matter of the higher the better when it comes to the height of the smoke plume. If the smoke reaches above 4.3 miles high, then the chances of volcanic lightning increase. If it happens and the cloud is lower, it's much more likely to have been caused by fracto emission. One thing is for sure, it makes for a spectacular fireworks display, so long as you can safely view it, of course. 3. Starling murmurations. A murmuration is one of the animal kingdom's finest aerial displays. Hundreds of starlings all flock together, flying in unison to create swirling shapes and formations. Sometimes they don't seem to form a shape, but a bit like cloud watching, they can create amazing pictures for us to see. One example, captured by a photographer named James Crombie from Ireland, caught the starlings as they seemed to make the shape of a huge bird in the air. But how are these tiny birds capable of such coordination? There's never a leading starling that sets the pace for the others. Instead, each bird takes cues and reacts to its nearby companions in the air. If the birds around it change speed or direction, then they will adapt too with lightning-fast reflexes. As to why they perform murmurations, it's to help them to be able to fend off predators such as hawks and buzzards that would prey on them if they were alone. By forming a swirling mass of flying bodies, it becomes more challenging for birds of prey to attack them. It also makes them appear bigger than they are by grouping together, which can help ward off creatures looking for a starling snack. 2. Green flash. You might have heard of a green flash being mentioned in pirate stories or movies, a strange green flash of light on the horizon at sunrise or sunset. For example, it was used in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies to signify a soul coming back from the dead. But did you know it's actually something you can see in the sky for yourself if you're lucky? A green flash occurs only for a few seconds, so blink and you'll miss it. During this strange phenomenon, the sun will seem to appear bright green. You might think red to be a more likely color for the sun to turn, but the reason why it appears green is down to wavelengths of light. The science behind it is that the lower the sun is, the longer the wavelengths of light have to travel to get to our eyes. Colors like red and yellow have shorter wavelengths, but colors like blue and green can get to us easier. When all of the perfect conditions are met, usually at sunset, then the green color is the one that dominates the most. Green flashes have long since been regarded as being positive omens within folklore. For example, some say that if you've seen one, then all will be well in your love life. Other myths about it say that if you spot it, the next day will be great. To see one for yourself, you'll need to make sure you get a day with clear skies and have a viewing point that's either high up or on the ocean to ensure that the horizon is far enough away but also clearly visible. 1. Fog bows. Rainbows are known for their abundance of color, but did you know that you can spot one with no color at all? Fog bows follow the arc shape of a rainbow, but they're completely white. They happen in the same way that rainbows do when there's sun behind you, but it's also raining lightly. The small rain particles then refract the sunlight, and unlike a rainbow where the colors split to show the full prism of color, in fog bows all the colors stay merged, making them appear white. This is due to a process called diffraction, which broadens the light in the fog bow. That's also why they appear wider when you spot them in the sky. You can also spot this phenomenon when you're up in the air yourself. Cloud bows are cousins of fog bows in meteorological terms and are caused by the water droplets formed in the clouds as you fly by in a plane. Sometimes the cloud bow might even turn into a full circle if you're in the middle of a fog patch. 9. MOMA-class vessels. Russia's MOMA-class ships were designed mainly for coastal surveillance and electronic intelligence gathering. They were also used as buoy tenders. Like many things that were created during the Soviet era, these vessels were highly secretive. So much so that our modern knowledge of them is limited. Built in Poland during the 1960s and 70s, the MOMA fleet was equipped with both radio and radar systems that were used for intercepting any sign of an adversary's presence. Their main purpose was to detect an enemy's presence as early as possible. These ships were equipped with double hulls that were made from conventional steel, which meant that they were strong enough to break through at least some ice and were protected against flooding. The MOMA vessels were part of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet and also served in the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. This image reportedly shows a wrecked MOMA-class ship near the border between Egypt and Sudan, although the name of the vessel is unknown. 8. The Carmel. In 2019, the Israeli military unveiled a new street-fighting vehicle called the Carmel. Designed for urban warfare, the 35-ton tracked vehicle is slightly more narrow than a conventional tank. The Israel Defense Force, IDF, developed the Carmel after its other armored vehicles had trouble navigating through narrow city streets during the 2014 Gaza war. It fits a 2-member crew and is semi-automated. Equipped with some of the latest stealth technology, it's almost completely invisible to enemy radar. The Carmel has a hybrid engine, an IED detection and neutralization system, and tactical drones that can be deployed for surveillance, reconnaissance, and attack activities. When the IDF announced the new vehicle, there were 3 prototypes displayed during their demonstration. The Elbit Systems design features a helmet-mounted display, which was based on the helmets that were developed for F-35 pilots. The prototype created by Rafael Advanced Defense Systems allows for 360-degree situational awareness with its panoramic console display. Then, the third design from Israel Aerospace Industries is equipped with an Xbox-like joystick. IAI Robotics manager Mir Shabtai told the Washington Post that the Carmor's artificial intelligence platform provides its operators with only the information that they need, letting them know what they need to focus on the most. It can even make the decision to fire at its targets. The United Nations predicts that at least 2.5 billion people throughout the world will live in cities by the year 2050. In considering the need to maneuver through tight and crowded spaces, the IDF has truly come up with a vehicle fit for the future. 7. F-117 Nighthawk. The Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk was developed during the early 1980s, and it was the first operational aircraft to be designed with stealth technology. It was built by Lockheed's Secretive Advanced Development Program ADP division, better known by the nickname Skunk Works. The F-117 was designated as a black project, and was even kept secret from some of the most top-ranking Pentagon officials. The stealth attack aircraft's distinctive shape was designed to reduce its radar signature, but was aerodynamically unstable, requiring constant correction from a fly-by-wire system. In addition to having quadruple redundant fly-by-wire controls, it was equipped with sophisticated navigation and attack systems. It also had an automated planning system, which could release weapons and perform virtually all the functions that would be needed during an attack mission. The government went out of its way to prevent the public from discovering the aircraft. When an F-117 pilot fatally crashed in the Sequoia National Forest in July of 1986, authorities quickly guarded off the area and imposed a strict media blackout. The Air Force restricted the airspace above the wreck and had a helicopter circle overhead to ensure that nobody could get close enough to know what was going on. Firefighters were denied entry to the site, even though the wreck was on fire and the F-117 debris was cleared away and replaced with the staged wreck of a different aircraft. The government publicly acknowledged the existence of the F-117 on November 10, 1988, after a grainy photograph of its silhouette in the night sky was revealed during a Pentagon press conference. However, it didn't make its first public appearance until 2 years later in 1990, when the Air Force showed a flight demonstration of the Nighthawk. The F-117 was later retired in 2008 due to the government's fielding of the F-22 Raptor. Even though the Nighthawk is no longer used in combat, some of the aircraft have been kept in airworthy condition and have occasionally been seen flying in the sky since 2009. 6. Black Knight. Designed by BAE Systems for the US military, the Black Knight is a prototype unmanned ground combat vehicle, and it has the appearance of a tank. Weighing 12 tons, it's light enough to be airlifted and deployed from a Lockheed C-130 Hercules cargo plane. The Black Knight was designed to traverse all types of terrain in both day and night missions that would otherwise be deemed too dangerous for manned vehicles. It's capable of operating autonomously and can be driven from inside another vehicle using its robotics operator control station. Using its advanced perception and autonomous navigation systems, it can detect and avoid obstacles. It's also capable of planning routes based on either directness or the lowest terrain risk available. Developed as part of a project called the Armed Robotic Demonstrator, the Black Knight made its first appearance in 2006 at the Association of the United States Army in Washington, D.C. It received a lot of attention and has been continuously improved upon in recent years. In March of 2017, the Black Knight was reintroduced by BAE as the Armed Robotic Combat Vehicle, ARCV. Today, the Army is still evaluating the vehicle, and it remains a work in progress. 5. The Beast of Kandahar. The Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel has been nicknamed the Beast of Kandahar and is a top-secret stealth aircraft that was developed for the US Air Force and the Central Intelligence Agency during the early 2000s. Little is known about the RQ-170, which first entered service in 2007. It gained its nickname as the Beast of Kandahar after it was spotted on a runway near the Kandahar airfield in southern Afghanistan later that year. During its early days, the military used it to spy on Iran and scope out the compound where Osama bin Laden was hiding. The Air Force formally acknowledged the drone's existence in 2009, but released almost no details about the technology the aircraft is equipped with. In 2011, Iran's state-sponsored news agency released footage of an RQ-170 that was captured by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. However, US officials denied claims that the Iranian military hacked the drone and caused it to crash, but they did confirm that the vehicle featured in the footage was a genuine Kandahar Beast. Iran's ability to detect and capture the cutting-edge drone was unnerving to American officials, who asked Iranian authorities to return the vehicle. Iranian Foreign Minister Ahmad Vahidi responded by criticizing the US for failing to apologize for invading the country's airspace. Former Vice President Dick Cheney slammed then-President Barack Obama for failing to order an airstrike to retrieve or destroy the vehicle once it fell into Iranian hands. Iran has since developed its own unmanned drones based on the RQ-170's design. If you were able to name your own stealth vehicle, what would you name it? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. 4. HSWMS Helsingborg. Built during the early 2000s for the Swedish Navy, the HSWMS Helsingborg is a small warship called a corvette. It's the second of 5 Visby-class stealth vessels that were built between 2000 and 2015. The Helsingborg was named after Sweden's 8th largest city and was designed for coastal warfare. Its hull is made from carbon fiber reinforced plastic, which makes the ship difficult to detect by enemy forces. The hull also reduces its weight to half of what it would be if it were made with conventional materials. Despite being lightweight, the material is strong, giving the ship the advantages of both speed and durability. Like other Visby-class ships, minimal equipment is stored on the vessel's exterior. Life rafts and other items that can normally be found on the outside of a ship are instead kept in the hull of the Helsingborg. The corvette features an advanced stealth fire control radar system that delivers information to a fire control system that helps direct weapons to their target. To maintain stealth, its missiles are stored below deck and are fired through special hatches. Having a hull made from composite materials reduces the Helsingborg's infrared and radar signatures. It has a detection range of 19 miles, which means that it doesn't appear on other vessels' radar unless it comes within that distance. In 2021, the Swedish government signed a contract with Saab for the development of a second-generation class of Visby corvettes. The agreement calls for 4 ships, whose designs will build on the latest version of the Visby-class vessel. Sukhoi S-70 Okhotnik B. Nicknamed the Hunter, the Sukhoi S-70 Okhotnik B is Russia's first unmanned aerial combat vehicle. It's designed to deliver precision-guided bombs at long ranges without a pilot, and it somewhat resembles the American-made B-2 stealth bomber, without the need for a cockpit and equipment to perform life-sustaining functions for a human pilot. The Hunter has more room for weapons. The technology it uses has been around for a while and is nothing new to the US and other countries with advanced militaries. However, it marks a milestone in the advancement of Russia's military technology and its ability to attack heavily defended targets. The Hunter was first spotted in January of 2019 during ground trials outside Novosibirsk. A few months later, Russia's Ministry of Defense released a video of the vehicle's successful maiden flight, which took place in Akhtybinsk above Charlov Space Flight Test Center at an altitude of 1,969 feet. After visiting the Charlov facility on May 14th of that same year, Vladimir Putin confirmed that the aircraft's development was moving along according to schedule. The second Hunter prototype was rolled out in late 2021. State-owned news agency TASS announced in early 2022 that preparations for its debut were underway. The Russian Defense Minister, Sergei Shoigu, said that the vehicle would hopefully be finished later that year. The country's troops are slated to receive deliveries of the drone by 2024. 2. B-21 Raider. The Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider will complement the aging B-52 Spirit bomber fleet and as well as the small fleet of B-2 stealth bombers used by the US Air Force. According to Northrop Grumman Vice President Doug Young, it's been in the works since it was first conceptualized in July of 2014 as part of the Long-Range Strike Bomber program. When it's completed, it'll be the most advanced military aircraft ever built. The multi-billion-dollar project's main objective is to develop a high-speed aircraft that has total stealth and a heavy bomb cargo capacity. To achieve super stealth, the airframe will be made out of a hardened reflective material that can change colors to reflect its surroundings, which has the added effect of reducing radar detectability. The B-21 radar will be nuclear capable and will be able to accommodate manned or unmanned operations. It's also being designed with future upgrades and modernization efforts in mind, so that it can continue to evolve and improve even after it rolls off the production line. The aircraft's development is a response to the perceived growing threat of rapidly modernizing militaries, particularly in China and Russia. The Pentagon is planning to buy 100 of the stealth bombers, which will come at an estimated cost of $639 million each. So far, the government has only released vague renderings of the B-21. The Air Force plans to finally reveal it to the public during the first week of December 2022 in California, but has yet to announce an exact date. 1. The Sea Hunter. In recent years, Russia and China, countries that the US doesn't have a great relationship with, have begun to rapidly modernize their militaries, with the apparent goal of developing quieter submarines that can travel close to the shore undetected. American officials are especially concerned by Russia's ambitions to replace its outdated naval submarine fleet with newer and better vehicles that can carry large amounts of massively destructive nuclear weapons. To counter this advancing technology, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as DARPA, created the Anti-Submarine Warfare Continuous Trail Unmanned Vessel (ACTUV) program. It aims to develop an autonomous aquatic drone that's capable of traveling thousands of miles of open sea for months at a time without a single human aboard. The vehicle, nicknamed the Sea Hunter, will be tasked with navigating through narrow channels and shipping traffic in search of enemy submarines using sonar and radar. The Sea Hunter is programmed to follow all international maritime laws as it carries out its work. At 132 feet long, it's the largest unmanned ship ever built. Open water testing of the technology began in 2016, and DARPA announced the program's successful completion 2 years later. DARPA program manager Alexander Wallen praised it as a significant milestone toward the development of unmanned submarines, but the prototype was then turned over to the Office of Naval Research. Shortly after the handover, DARPA's Tactical Technology Office Director, Fred Kennedy, said that the development of the Sea Hunter represents a shift in the US Navy's philosophy. He explained that instead of using a smaller number of big, powerful, and costly submarines, they're now relying on large numbers of commoditized, simpler platforms that are more capable in the aggregate. In his own words, Kennedy likened the strategy to replacing king and queen pieces on the maritime chessboard with lots of pawns.
Number 3. The Coney Island Submarine. Before Coney Island was attached to the rest of Brooklyn, it was, as its name implies, an island separated from Brooklyn by a waterway known as Coney Island Creek. It was turned into a peninsula during the 1920s and 30s, when the eastern half of the creek was filled in. What's left of the former strait today consists of a 1.8-mile-long tidal inlet filled with mysterious crumbling shipwrecks. One particular wreck stands out among the rest, a partially submerged, rusting submarine that has sat in the creek for as long as most people can remember. The listing vessel is in extremely poor condition, making it difficult to gauge its age or origins just by eyesight alone. During the 1960s, a shipworker named Jerry Bianco heard rumors about some sunken U-boats in the waters off Long Island and was compelled to search for them. He was also interested in locating the wreck of the Andrea Doria, an Italian luxury ship that sank off the Nantucket coast in 1956. He believed that the Andrea Doria contained around $6 million worth of scrap metal, so Bianco persuaded investors to fund his ambitions. In order to find the ship, they built a bright yellow submarine called the Questor 1. It was finally ready for its maiden voyage in 1971, but it was 8 pounds too heavy for the crane that was on standby to place it into the water, so Bianco removed some of the ballast to lighten it. He instructed the crane operator not to lower the submarine into the water until he put the ballast back in, but the driver didn't listen. The crane operator put the sub into the water, and it fell on its side. The press and onlookers mistakenly believed that this was Bianco's fault, and he became a laughingstock. His investors lost confidence in him, even after he proved that the submarine could operate with the proper amount of ballast, and it has remained in Coney Island Creek ever since. It's now a decaying testament to Bianco's dashed dreams. It no longer boasts its vivid yellow paint job, which gave way to corrosion long ago, courtesy of the creek's heavily polluted waters. Number 2. USS Trepang. Built during the late 1960s, the USS Trepang was a U.S. Navy Sturgeon-class attack submarine. In early 1971, the vessel departed from its home port in New London, Connecticut for the Arctic, where it spent a month operating beneath the polar ice cap. During that time, its crew carried out data tests on its weapon systems and scientific studies on the ice cap's movements, composition, and geological history. The Trepang had a lengthy but somewhat uneventful career that lasted nearly 30 years, spending much of its time along the eastern seaboard and in the North Atlantic. It was also deployed to the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and to the Arctic for a second time. In 1978, the FBI arrested 2 men for allegedly plotting to steal the USS Trepang and sell it for $300 million. Prosecutors initially accused a 24-year-old Missouri man named Edward John Mendenhall and 26-year-old James W. Cosgrove from Rochester, New York, of planning to kill the Trepang's crew and rendezvous at sea with an unidentified buyer. The pair contacted a Missouri businessman named Charles Rosine and asked if he would be willing to help them find a buyer for the submarine. Rosine immediately went to law enforcement, and the FBI convinced him to help them get more information about the plan. In a second phone call, Mendenhall told Rosine that he would need some money up front for supplies and other expenses that were needed to carry out the theft. Rosine said that he wouldn't give any cash advances unless Mendenhall came up with a workable plan. The FBI recorded the conversation, along with a third phone call, during which Mendenhall once again asked Rosine for money in advance. About a month later, Rosine met with Mendenhall and Cosgrove, who presented him with an outline for the plot and a list of supplies that they would need to buy ahead of time. Mendenhall told Rosine that a cash advance of $25,000 to $30,000 was needed. He repeated the request during another meeting the following day and was arrested by the FBI shortly thereafter. Mendenhall and Cosgrove were initially charged with conspiracy to steal public property, but prosecutors dropped the indictment at the 11th hour after concluding that the pair were trying to swindle Rosine but had no serious plans to steal the Trepang. The change was made without explanation, and the judge wasn't too happy about it. Describing the case as crazy and incredibly screwed up, an unnamed source told the Washington Post that the reversal was made because a key witness changed their testimony, and another witness was unavailable. Mendenhall's lawyer, Donald L. Wolf, claimed that prosecutors called the indictment off after interviewing the Trepang's former executive officer, who said that it would be virtually impossible to steal the submarine. Wolf also said that at least one government witness, who was slated to testify at the trial, knew that Mendenhall's plan wasn't real. We'll most likely never know the exact details of what led up to the prosecutor's change of heart, which led to the conspiracy indictment being replaced with allegations of fraud. The bizarre case marked one of the few times that the Trepang made major headlines. Another strange story involving the submarine came sometime during the 2000s when a French paranormal magazine called Top Secret published photos of what appeared to be a UFO. Supposedly, the image was taken by the Trepang's crew during its first Arctic expedition in 1971. According to the article, the images were captured near an uninhabited Norwegian island called Jan Mayen, after Officer John Klicka spotted the unexplained objects using the submarine's periscope. The magazine claimed to have received the photos from an unidentified source. With little information to go on, verifying the origins and authenticity of the pictures proved to be more or less impossible. In 2015, some savvy web sleuths claimed to have tracked down Admiral Dean R. Sackett, who reportedly commissioned the Trepang and was on the mission that made the mysterious sighting. According to an article posted on theblackvault.com, Sackett agreed to an interview but didn't say much about the alleged UFO incident, claiming that he only saw ice. The website's investigators also said that they got in touch with John Klicka, who reported seeing nothing unusual during the mission as well. There's little mention of the UFO photos outside of a handful of paranormal websites, and no verified news sources have reported on it, making it hard to distinguish which parts of the story are fact, if any, and which details are fiction. However, It seems as though the Black Vault made a genuine effort to get to the bottom of the case and to provide what little documentation it could find. This includes an official list of the ship's crew and a scanned image of a French magazine article that the photos first appeared in. Even if the conversations with Admiral Sackett really happened, and if he did see a UFO hovering over the Arctic Ocean while aboard the Trepang, it's likely that he's bound by a security oath and can't publicly discuss the matter. If the photos are real, there's no evidence explicitly tying them to the Trepang, indicating that they could have been taken at another place and time by a different submarine. It's also possible, and perhaps even likely, that the photos are doctored, which would explain their complete lack of traceability. One social media user sarcastically commented that if the pictures are real, they're some of the best UFO images the person had ever seen. Reporting for the Fade to Black radio show, which focuses heavily on conspiracy theories, paranormal investigator Alex Mastretta speculated that the images were possibly taken during a military test of some kind, and that the test may have involved unusual technology. He admittedly doesn't have any evidence to support this idea, and encouraged others who are trying to solve the mystery to consider all possible scenarios. Commenters weighed in with their own theories, with one person remarking that some of the photos look like missiles being launched from the ocean. Another person said that the objects are naval gunnery targets, confidently adding, "No mystery here. As things currently stand, anyone's guess is as good as the next person's when it comes to identifying the source of the images and the objects that are in them." Do you think the Trepang could have captured evidence of some type of alien technology in the Arctic? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 1. The Surcouf. At the end of World War I, the conflict's major Allied participants signed an agreement to prevent a future arms race known as the Washington Naval Treaty. One of its stipulations imposed strict size limits on certain naval vessels, including battleships and cruisers. However, the signatories failed to agree on such restrictions when it came to light ships like submarines and destroyers, and France eagerly took advantage of this technicality. At a time when the US and Britain had largely abandoned their submarine development programs, France mounted an aggressive effort to build a powerful submarine fleet. With no size limits to worry about, they went ahead and built the Surcouf. At 361 feet long, it was the world's largest submarine until Japan's I-400 class subs entered service in 1944. Built during the 1930s, the Surcouf was designed specifically to seek out and engage in surface combat. Its twin-gun turret was equipped with two 8-inch guns with a 60-round magazine capacity, and the ship was fitted with 10 torpedo tubes. The submarine also had a watertight hangar mounted with anti-aircraft cannon and machine guns. It housed a float plane that was meant for locating potential targets and tracking the fall of shot from the vessel's guns. In addition to being heavily armed, the Surcouf contained a cargo compartment with room for 40 passengers or prisoners. But for all its might and power, the sub ran into numerous issues starting early on in its career. It rolled badly in choppy waters, and its trim was difficult to adjust. The vessel's gun turrets leaked, and its diesel engines were extremely unreliable. The vessel also dove slowly, taking 2 minutes to descend to a depth of 39 feet, which made it vulnerable to enemy aircraft. After entering service in 1934, the Surcouf occasionally operated in the Atlantic and Mediterranean, spending most of its time at sea on the surface. Its future became uncertain in 1940, when Germany invaded France. At the time, the Surcouf was undergoing repairs in the port city of Brest for a jammed rudder and a busted engine, and it was incapable of diving. After receiving word that Brest would likely be captured by the Germans within 3 days, the vessel puttered across the English Channel and sought refuge in Plymouth. The British gave the Surcouf's crew the option of either sailing on the submarine under the newly established Free French Naval Forces or returning to France. All but one sailor ultimately went back to France, including its captain. The new crew members were recruited among the naval officers and sailors who were stranded in England, most of whom were inexperienced with submarines. The British saw little practical use for the Surcouf, but it was kept in service at the urging of the Free French leader Charles de Gaulle. It spent the majority of 1941 in the Caribbean, and along the east coast of North America, where it underwent a complete overhaul in New Hampshire and participated in the invasion of several pro-Vichy French-Canadian islands. These activities did little to improve sailors' opinions of the ship, with British Admiral Sir Charles Kennedy Purvis describing it as having no operational value and being short of a menace. In early 1942, the submarine left Bermuda for the Panama Canal with plans to sail to Tahiti, then Sydney. With just one working motor, it was incapable of diving or going fast, leaving its crew with no choice but to travel on the surface at a slow speed. It never reached the Panamanian city of Colón as planned, and it never sent a distress signal. In fact, the Sarkouf was never seen again. The submarine's fate remains a mystery to this day. In the aftermath of its disappearance, rumors spread like wildfire and included allegations that its crew was loyal to the French Vichy government and had fired torpedoes at an Allied troop carrier. There were also claims that the sub was seen refueling a U-boat. Nearly a month after Sarkouf's disappearance, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sent a letter to the Director of Naval Intelligence. It claims that a highly confidential source reported that the submarine sank off the island of Martinique about 2 weeks after it went missing. Hoover's alleged source was never identified, and the statement in the letter was never explained. The most probable theory suggests that the Sarkouf collided with the American merchant freighter Thomson Lykes, which struck an unknown object on the night of February 18, 1942, in the same region the submarine vanished. Crew members observed a cigar-like object in the water shortly before the crash, which was followed by an underwater explosion. They reported hearing cries for help soon after, but said that no objects or people rose to the water's surface. Assuming that they had collided with a U-boat, they carried on without looking any further into the incident. Without any physical trace of the Sarkouf, there's no way to prove whether it was the unfortunate object that the Thomson Lykes ran into, but it's the most widely accepted explanation, and until or unless the wrecked submarine is found, that's as close as anyone can get to solid proof. Would you rather take a cruise or ride in a submarine? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.